Welcome to the Engaging African Realities podcast. Please join us as we engage scholars and practitioners in conversations about their experiences from the field and beyond. We hope to bring more awareness about the cutting-edge work going into bolstering the field of grounded African theology and opening new possibilities and frontiers of knowledge.
Can you just tell us a little bit about your involvement with the Nagel Institute projects?
So I knew of the institute, I heard of the institute, and I knew that they were doing grants for researches, but did not engage deeply until I applied for a grant myself, which was, I think, a 2017 or 2018 or 2016, 2018 year, when the publicity came out and the issue of looking at African realities interested me. So a colleague of mine and myself, that is Professor Mojola and myself, were talking away, and we were very interested on the ways in which funerals were taking place and how much they were taking. But one of the things that interested us was in the local news, there was a family that had lost their member, and their member had died in London. And this particular year, they were going to bring the spirit back into the country. They were doing a memorial service and they were going to bring the spirit. And we were really keen on what is it about funerals, because they are a big thing and they have different facets and scenarios. And so we said, oh, maybe we could do a research into this and find out what really goes on in funerals in this particular part of Kenya. And so we said, oh, we can apply for this funding. And so we wrote a piece, a project, and gave it in. And it was interesting to write. Just you have this idea, and now to put it into paper and convince that it is a viable piece of research work. So we put it in and said, I will wait and see. And we thought we'll be the two of us, but we'll involve other student researchers. After a while, we heard that we had won the grant. It wasn't a big one, but we got some funding for it. And so that meant, oh, now we have to go ahead and basically go and do this piece of work. So we organized ourselves and took time off at the institution, organized the groups that we wanted to interview and places, and really went out. And then also planned to attend some funerals when we found some. And it was an interesting thing to do for the year, and to go out, really sit, interview, experience, observe, and see how your own perspectives are challenged and how then you are able to challenge the other perspectives. So that whole year, going out and writing and engaging our own students was very, very interesting. So when we were in the field, we looked at gender issues, we listened to women's stories and funerals, and finished that piece of work. After that, then I was also engaged in now evaluating projects that had been, that people had applied. And that was also very, very interesting in terms of reading other people's work and choosing actually which one do you give and which one don't you give the money. So I have the experience of writing a project, presenting it and waiting anxiously. I have the experience of reading other people's as they wait anxiously to be told yes or no. And also to be asked, why do you think my piece of project did not go through, And me having to say, actually, why did this one go through and why did that one not go through? And then now I've had the experience of organizing teams and telling them, yes, you can. So this team and that team, please apply. And I'm so happy that the two teams that worked this year, both of them got the funding. So I'm now sitting here as a matriarch trying to see how is it going and how is it going. So that is my experience around Nagel. Mm-hmm.
So I have a follow-up question. So you just briefly touched upon being on multiple sides of the grant process. Could you tell us a little bit more about which projects go through and which projects don't get through? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
On the side of applying, of course, you sweat through making your proposal, right, viable. You have no clue who is going to read it. You are just imagining that they'll be interested. So you have that anxiety of, does it make sense? Is it viable? Is it a topic enough? You know, have I written it concretely in a concrete way? So you go through that anxiety and spending sleepless nights thinking through changing it and thinking the one for yesterday is better than the one for today, clearing it. And then we were two of us and each one of us criticizing, saying, no, it doesn't make sense here. No, it doesn't make sense here. Trying to make sure that every paragraph that you've been asked, you have enough words for that place, enough convincing proposal, that the objectives, the questions, the tie, and the results, you know. So that anxiety, it puts you into that mode of a researcher convincing the other to accept that this proposal is viable. Then you have the budgets. I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a banker, so having to learn that, especially making sure that all your budget points are working. And of course, it pushed you to use the no money. So I had to go out and get colleagues that knew budgets, and I'll say, this is what I want, this is the money I'm applying for, and I need to ensure that each bit makes sense. So it pushed me, gave me other skills, financial skills, on how to write the budget. And thirdly is the skill of working with the other, because my other colleague is in philosophy, in philosophy and in translation. I am from history and gender, and so trying to see how do we work with each other until this proposal is not 2 in 1, it is 1. So that's another challenge, having to learn skills of negotiating, skills of navigating, skills of being diplomatic in the ways in which you work with the other. So that was really a learning experience and a growing experience, because while I'd written proposals for funding, it was just convincing them that I need this money to run this within the institution. Those are the proposals that I wrote, but this is a research grant that I'm not just going to show their faces, I have to show the work that I have done, right? Then just going into the field again, because it's realities you don't read from the book. So the skills of having to know how to interview, where to interview, and how to ensure that what we are being told is not just hearsay, how to corroborate your research to make sure that what you get is concrete. And the dynamics in the field, because there are gatekeepers in the field, how to navigate them, how to ensure that both men and women and young people are able to talk about the funerals. And funerals are not happy occasions. So people are talking about their emotions, their anger, their pain, that they went through. For example, hearing narratives of the widows and the challenges that they face when they've lost loved ones, compared to the narratives of the widowers, for example, who you felt, oh, they get away scotch-free, but the widows really go through. And how then you involve, but you don't get too involved not to think critically. That was also interesting to learn that, yes, you get involved, but you have to distance yourself. I will read. And because I'm not a social scientist, so I had not learned, so it was learning on the job, right? But it was an interesting experience. So after that, of course, you now have to wait to judge others. So yours has been judged and it has gone through. Now I had to judge the others. One was the pressure of the number of proposals that you are given, right? And two is to see that they fit the guidelines that you are given. Then I was saying, is this what my proposal went through? Now I have to subject the other proposals through this. And three is to be objective, because all of them are wonderful proposals. Nobody has written a proposal that is not good. Everybody knows that they have written a good proposal. Is to be objective in terms of the regulations of the grant and to be fair on the work that has gone into writing the proposal. So pressure, both were pressurizing. I would say both were pressurizing. The good side of being on the side of judging, you know you are not the only one, right? And so you look forward to what the others have said. And interestingly, sometimes you found that what you found somebody else had found, they may not have said it with the same words, but it was really the same. And so that gave you some leeway, a good feeling that I was not just being too hard on it, somebody else has seen it. It was good to, subjecting that to the regulation. So the pressure eased when you knew that you had another group that has looked at it. Then thirdly, when it came now to looking at them, you are given 10 or whatever, you are supposed to reduce them. The reduction wasn't a good thing, that we are only going to give 12 and you have maybe 20 of them. That was not good, because then it ends up being like what you, for some it was automatic. You could find people saying, yes, this one is automatic, this one good, this one good. But then when it comes to those that you don't agree, you know, that the pressure, the stress was high. And sometimes you knew the people, you knew the people that wrote it. And you know very well that had on it, they are also researchers, but you just say it is not going to go through, right? And you see the reason, but then it now begins give and take. It's the dialogue on the table, right? That space is an interesting space to be in, but you wish you are not there, especially when you are dropping a work. But then you have to be there. But you know it is not dependent on you personally, right? While for the research writing unit was your work. Yes. Go ahead. Sorry.
So from your experience of being in those rather I guess you could call it a dicey or precarious space, how does one navigate, well, obviously doing a good job in discerning which proposals are viable and not viable, but also how does one go about still maintaining a cordial working relationship?
It's a political space. Even on the table, it's a political space. It's a political space.
Yeah.
That some arguments are stronger. Some people are good at convincing other than others, you know. So you also play your politics in that space. You cannot stay on the edge. Okay. You just
Yes.
have to say it, even if it's losing face. You still, but because they are colleagues that you rough each other, but you rough each other not. It's not personal. It is the okay. And then because you have had the reasonings, when you end up meeting those people that their projects did not go through, you don't pass the buck. You can easily say, actually, is what was discovered. What was written to you is what was discovered. And perhaps next time it could be strengthened. And I saw like one project that was rejected then. This time, I think it had been done better and it has gone through. So you go now to a position of not being judged, but accompanying. So being judged, and then in the end, now you take the role of accompanying, because rejection did not mean that they can't make it. It's just that it didn't make it now. It could make it another time. So my next role is to accompany those that felt that the proposals did not go through. And you got letters from people that you know from other countries. So, Prof, I gather you were on this seat and what didn't happen. So you say, oh, let me look at it. So you look at it and then you're able to have a dialogue. So you maintain the friendship. And now you are more of an accompanying person. And next time when they say, do you think I can try? You can just say, yeah, why not? Please go ahead and try. And as I said, I saw one or two that people tried later and they got funding. So you take an accompaniment role rather than a judge.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for really bringing in that perspective, because I feel like sometimes just generally when one applies for something and one gets a rejection, it can be very it can be very gutting. But hearing you say that, sometimes rejection is not a state of permanence, but rather it presents an opportunity for going back and improving what one has already proposed or what one has sent in. So thank you for that. Alisa?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And one of the things I would love to hear about is you mentioned obviously both sides that you've played, or both roles, the roles as a grantee and the role of having to make that decision. So coming from those two places, what would be some advice that you would give current grantees that are working through their projects now? And what is some advice that you would give people who will be interested in applying for these projects in the future?
For those that are grantees, those that have already received the funding and are working on the funding, is to the encouragement that I give to ensure that you do the work very well. Like I know two groups now within the country, although I'm not involved, but I know them as people and as researchers, and some are former students, is to impress upon them that this is a serious work that they need to do, and they just need to do it well, be very committed and do it well, meet the deadlines, for example, and even if they have a weak link among them, especially those that are more than one, you don't find all of them with with equal strength, that they'll have some weak links, that those links should not bring their work down. They can sacrifice and make sure that those links are still strengthened. And doing research within this context is not an easy thing. It's not easy. You don't have the leisure of sitting around and really taking time. You have to really sacrifice the time. So mine is to really always to say, you continue to work with each other, you continue to ensure the weak links are strengthened, and that is you. For those that will be applying, right, I would just clearly say that ensure that you form your groups well, that this doing research is also friendship, so you don't work with strangers. because you don't know them. So it's good to choose your teams well, right? Choose your teams well and understand their strengths and what they bring in. And at the proposal writing stage, you know who are strong and who are weak. And you can easily try to maybe not take some people on, because if you take a weak person, then struggle working on how to strengthen. So I'll say, choose your teams well, choose the title well, the topic well, and make sure that each person is passionate about the title, because we can all be passionate about the money, but not about the title, because this is a research grant, and many people do research without those grants. But when there is money, there is a more incentive, right? So I would say, because there is money, then you need to be careful on who you take on board, especially the leader. You'll end up really struggling on writing the research alone, but still giving the people the money because they are on the project. So I would say, get the passion and interest. I'm glad that my colleague and I were really passionate and interested, and the students we took on board were very, very passionate and interested, and they went to each funeral, so that was good. But I would say just choose people with passion. If you say we are going to, like the project I see now, that people have to attend particular services every Sunday, that they are going to be there, and they'll be there, divorce themselves from being participants in the service and being observers of the service. So that's what I encourage them. And they fall off, they quarrel, they struggle and trying to be a mediator, trying to say we need to still work together. Now you are in the boat together, and nobody's going to make a hole in the boat because you'll all sink. So no making holes in the boat, but forging forward. That's what I would say. Well, that's what I tell them. I hope I've answered the question. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. And, one of the things that I think makes this project so special, and what Nagel Institute is doing with Templeton Trust, as you know, and I think you've mentioned, is that it's allowing for this conversation between the social sciences and the theology to take place. It's allowing the communication between the different disciplines and the research among different disciplines, right? And part of what we're also looking at is a grounded theology, the theology from the ground up, opposed to coming from, I guess, the top down. So what I would like to hear a little bit about is, since your involvement in this project is in your involvement as a grantee, your involvement as someone on the selection team, and even a facilitator, what, if any, is the impact that you have seen of the research that your team has done and the research of teams that came before or after you?
One of the things is it is epistemological, that is in terms of providing knowledge. And I think what this Nagel research has done is to push the boundaries of knowledge production. That theologians produce their knowledge and social scientists produce their knowledge, and social scientists are proud of the only ones who can do research, and looking down about theologians who can only maybe pray and interpret scriptures. But the fact that they are forced to look at each other as researchers, because both do research, but always social scientists think they are the only ones who do research. The fact that they are forced to look at each other and to say society is not only theology and society is not only social. Society is multifaceted, it is intersectional. A person attending a funeral is both social and theological. Beliefs, their fears of the transcendent, and they are also members of the society. So they go through the emotions both. So a social scientist and a theologian is actually one person. So this Nagel has done is to ensure that we look at each other rather than building our own castles and thinking ours is the highest, is to show the castle is going to be strong if you build it together. Because human beings are not partitioned. There's no day I am a believer and there's no other day I am. As an African Christian, one is really, it is an intersectional. There is the way in which we embody the divinity, we embody the actions. So this research, what it has done is to ensure that both social scientists, theologians, whoever, are able to look at each other, embody each other's strengths, and produce knowledge. So in terms of epistemology, this has managed to ensure that this knowledge is produced together, right? So no one thinks they are better than the other. No one is, the usual rivalries that go on within disciplines. So when I see social scientists, as I see theologians looking at each other and working together, I laugh, because in real life, some of them have nothing to do with the other, but these are supposed them to work with each other. So that's one. Two, what this research has produced in terms of the papers, in terms of the whatever, is going back to the students that both the scientists, the social scientists, and the theologians are teaching. So if I take an article and I read it, a student is reading a piece of work that has been produced by both the social scientist and the theologian. What that is doing to the student is pushing their boundaries as well. That faith or religion has something within social science, or theology has something within social science. So the student is reading information, widening their mental capacities, and being made to think that way within society, rather than just saying, I'll preach to them and they'll be saved or they'll go to hell, but to say, how does this really act within society? So it is both the researchers that have been forced to work together, it is the material that they have produced, and it is the impact of that material to the students that they're using, because most of these are academics, right? And because they are academics, they will be teaching. So their students are not just going to be monolithic, their students are also going to be really intersectional. That's what I think. So in three ways, in both the people themselves, the impact on the people themselves, the impact on the material they produce, and the impact that material has on the students that they are raising as researchers.
That's really good. Thank you so much. This conversation has been so enriching, and I'm so appreciative of your time today. I think the last question that I would want to ask are and you might have spoken a little bit about this as you spoke about your project, but are there any challenges or barriers that you had to overcome? I think you especially spoke about the challenges as being on the selection committee, but how about as you prepared your grant project? What were some of the challenges or the barriers that you faced? And did you start the project with maybe one concept in mind, and then find that your team had to go in a different direction in terms of the research, because what you were finding might not have been lining up what your initial thoughts or hypothesis might have been?
And for me, I look at it as a positive, as a challenge in terms of your assumptions being in class. Because academics, you spend all this time either in the lab or in the library, your desk top review, you pride yourself from your literature review and what you discover and whatever. And as soon as you step out, you realize that I'm asking the wrong questions. Or before I even ask, can I hear their story? Rather than, so even the challenge of where you begin from, I am a researcher. And so people look at you, so what? So you are a unique being from space, researcher. What is researcher? Being pushed to come and be one of them. and then here. So the challenge of moving away from this lecture room to sitting at an equal footing with those that are your respondents, right? So it's a humbling experience to be brought down to sit and to talk to them as equals, because actually you are the one in need. So being on the other side of receiving, you know, because as an academic, sometimes you have this attitude of, okay, I just want to prove this and that, but to be humble that now we are going to educate you, that your literature has to be challenged with what is the real life. So being pushed to make a connection between the literature and the reality, that was a challenge. A challenge of deciphering what is being said, understanding the phraseology, the idioms, and translating that into what somebody else will understand. Having to use another language, right? Because in academia, you are using English, you are writing and reading in English. But sitting with people who English is not their first language, or they don't even use it at all. They use their what is their mother tongue. Even me, English is a father tongue, not a mother tongue. But for me, I can use it. But them having to just tell you as it is using their mother tongue. So it is you to translate, it is you to decipher, it is you to interpret, it is you to exegete. What hermeneutic do you have to use to exegete or to interpret? Those were challenges. And when we are taught research in class, it is like it is from A to C, A to D. But you may discover that no, it is from X to A. And those are the challenges that you have to very fast understand. So I think going to the field was have to be open to the field. I've done one. So the next one, I was like, I will let them lead me rather than me leading them. And in the end, you realize, no, let us talk. The narrative methodology, for example, that the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians embody was very good, because let's hear the narrations. Somebody said, I've told you my story, now you can get it out. So I can say, so as a widow, this is the things I get out of it. You know, for example, I was denied entry through the gate. So I'm like, the gate? So you have interpreting those which you don't find in the book until the story has been told in the book. So making those connections were challenges, but in the end, you learn the hard way. And I can see when the current grantees struggling with language, you know, because you have a social researcher and a theologian, you may not, and we are talking about Africa, you don't come from the same tribe, right? So, and then you are doing research from a tribe that is not even your own. So both of you are having to learn that language before you do it. So the learning, the language, and language encompasses many things. Language is culture, language is communication, language is expression, you know, kind of thing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also one has to take on.
Thank you. Well, this
there are
has
lots
been
of gender dynamics. A lot of gender dynamics that have to be taken into consideration, both in terms of those that are doing research, grantors, and even those who are giving the whatever. It is important to note that men and women on the table is important, because we read projects differently. What I see in this grant and maybe somebody else may not see. So Nagel to take on the gender dynamics in terms of giving the grants, and even those that are taking on the grants, that the should be equal or skewed to those that are not on the table most of the times, and those are women.
Right. Right. Do you also feel that there are gender dynamics that play out in the field in terms of those that
For
you're
me,
interviewing
one of the things
and
I
meeting with?
is that the people front themselves are largely male, because women for a long time have not been viewed as sources of knowledge. So you have to make a conscious effort
Right.
to hear knowledge from the women. And so if you are in the field, maybe women are busy cooking for you and you are allowed to talk with men, because talking is viewed as male. They are the ones who have the leisure to talk. The women are busy preparing the food for those that are talking. So you have to consciously ensure that you get the information from the women as well. And if you don't make that conscious effort, the men will speak as though they are talking on behalf of women. And I'm always saying, no, that dynamic must be viewed. Even the proposals must be read with that in mind.
Yes.
That's good. That's good. Well, Professor Mambo, I could go on all day with you, to be honest, because I would really, I'm very much interested in just your study and the work that you do in women and gender, the field of women and gender. So I would love to hear about that if we did have the time. Thank you so much, Professor Mambo. Thank you for your time. We're glad that you were able to join us today and that the storms there did not impact
it's
our
gone.
connection. Yes, yes, yes. So this, like I said earlier, this has been a quite enriching conversation, and I wish I could go on and on with you, or even sit into one of your lectures. But hopefully there would be a day that I'll be able to do something like that and hear you lecture on one of these topics. So we just thank you so much, and we bring greetings from the cold weather and snowy weather of New York, and we also give you our pass on the regards of our Professor Afe Adagame and the rest of our Nagel team.
Thanks for tuning in today. Please follow us on Facebook to keep up with upcoming episodes. Don't forget to like, follow, and share our podcast. Until next time, let's keep engaging African realities.